Hi guys, welcome back to my experimental corner, and today it's going to be another one of my analysing odd notes. So we're going to go through the alphabet again because there is an interesting challenge that I thought of, and it was inspired by this verse of a particular song which was based on the original odd note video that I did. So before I carry on, let's have a listen to what this verse does.
Took a stroll through 810, asked each letter what they said. Can you be drawn in one stroke, clean and tight? Most said yes, but some said not quite. I strutted in with open pride, but odd notes lurked on either side. B was bold but full of tricks, two loops fighting politics. C was easy, smooth and round, but he fell flat, too many ends found. F looked hopeful, then confessed, I'm a dead-end mess, I must protest. D, you know, was smug and proud. Zero odd notes, they said it loud, but H and Y, a tragic sight. Dead ends everywhere, no hope in sight. And as I sketched each letter's fate, I felt the maths accelerate. Every stroke a quiet clue to what a single line can do. But a tweak here, a curve right there, a triangle added with artistic flair. Suddenly letters began to behave, even the stubborn ones learned to be brave.
And that's exactly what we're going to end up doing. See if we can make the letters behave themselves, particularly the ones that have 4 or 6 odd notes with the letter H. And with that being said, see if we can do the other ones that can be traced normally, and see if we can turn them to see if we can in turn make them improve. So with that being said, here's a reminder of what my handwriting looks like. So this is how I write each of my letters. And then we're going to go through each of them in node order, in descending order of nodes. And then we'll see if we can solve them and see if we can ultimately turn them into a 0 odd node pattern. Now, you're going to be in for a treat here, and I can't wait to get started. So, without further ado, let's start with the 4 plus odd node letters. The easiest one to do of these would be X, because then what we've got here, put them in no particular order. That's what I've done with X. It's easy enough. And then I went on to H. Now, H is the 6 odd node letter. And now, if you remember what I did with that, for those of you who have seen my previous video where I looked at these, you'd have remembered that I've done this draw pattern, the one that's got 2 odd nodes. So if you then do this, you've then made a 0 odd node pattern out of the letter H. Let's see if I can do that. It works. I'm going to do it one more time. Do these in the order that I've sussed them out. But I could turn every one of these into a 0 odd node draw pattern. Like that. That's for H. Now for T, so I did T next. There's a good one for T. And then what I'll do is I'll highlight each letter. I'll go through each draw pattern that I've done. And then you get to see where the letters are. Let me do that one again. You get to see where the letters are. And I've only just recently, I'm going to have to do that again. I've only just recently realised at this point that what I've done with T, you can do the same with Y. Not like that, because that looks really odd. That's not even a Y. There you go. So what you've done with T, you can do the same with Y. Like that. And then with A, I initially did A as a 2 odd node pattern, but then found out if you do that at the bottom, you can then make it a 0. Let me redo that one. You could turn that into a 0. Looks like an ice cream, upside down ice cream in a puddle. And then that leaves me, so I've done A, H, T, X and Y. So it leaves me with E, F and K. So with E, what I then did was this. And then with that, you can then do that's a 2 odd node pattern. Yeah, I know it looks like a D, but you'll see where I'm getting with this. And then we've got, that's D, and then we do, that's E. And then you found out that what you could do with E, you can do the same. Let me just, I think, oh, that's interesting. I think I found another one for H. Let me go back to what I had before. And then for F, I'll do that. There's a triangle instead. So that's leaving just K, and I've got a good one for K as well. Let me redo that one as well. Do that one again. And then, now that I've done that, I'll then point out where the letters are. Maybe use a thinner pencil. Let's see if I can do black on that. Hopefully you can see that. And we've got H there. Although I'm going to go back to the other one as well. A theoretical H. Good, try that again. And then go to that. And then we've got a T there. And there's your Y. A. I know it looked like I did a D there, but I'll come back. I will come back to that. An F. And there's a K. You might not be able to see those. So what I'll do is I'll quickly switch to another colour. But it won't let me. Not without putting up a fight. Let me try it with this pen. That's better. That's much better. So T. That's Y. I can barely be seen here. That's A. This one, it might look like a D, and I'll get to those later on in the video. But you can do the same with E as well. That's F. I might do the same. I might do something different with the D yet. That's F. That's K. That's another H. And look at that, I've turned 6 odd nodes with the H down to 0. And then with that, we'll move on to the next ones, which are the 2 odd nodes. And then I think to myself, which of these can I turn into odd 0? Into zeros? Which we'll find out. Let's start with B. Yeah, B is quite easy. Let me just try that again. No. Because that's 4 there. There's an even no junction there. And then what you can do with B, you can then sort of do the same with something like P. I've got a different way of doing something for P. Easy to do. Yeah, I'll just have to keep doing that. So it can be seen. So that can be done with P. And then with R, we do something else. Not that. That looks a bit obvious. So does that, but then what else can you do? I'm going to do what I normally would do with that. Well, that's the best way you can go with turning R into a 0 odd node draw pattern. Not like that. That'll do it. And then there are some other trickier ones that we'll get to, or we'll try and get to those. Now, what you could do with M, let me do an M quickly. Yeah, what you could do with M, I'll get that. That'll do it. What you could do with M, you can also do with W. I'm going to put the W down here. which is a clever thing to do. Yeah, so what you could do with M, you can do with W. And also, let me get rid of those. What you can do with N, what I've got here. What you can do with N, you can also do with Z. And I've just worked out that you can actually do the same with S as well. And I've just worked out, yeah, you're just going to keep doing that, aren't you? Yeah. You can also, let me do that again. Do the same with this as well. So that leaves now C, G, I, J, Q, U, V. I'm trying to think. Leaves me with C, G, I, J, L, P. I've done P. C, G, I, J, L, Q, U, and V. Another one I'm thinking that. C. But that's two. No, that's two odd nodes. Right, let me just switch to that a moment because I think this one's a 2. Like that. Because then you've got your one there. Anywhere with two odd nodes, I'm going to have to just do a dot on that. Do an indication on that. And I is another one you can't do an odd node out. You can't do a 0 odd node out of. Pardon me. But at least you can then still keep it at 2. You can still keep it at 2. Now, Q, on the other hand, I think Q, on the other hand, you can make it an odd node free pattern. You just have to make sure you do something like that. If you do, so that's those taken care of. That leaves me with G, J, L, G, just trying to think what I've got. G, J, so I've done 11 so far. G, J, L, U, V, C, I've done C, G, J, L, U, I've done 11. Yeah, there's 5 left. G, J, L, U, and V. Just pause then for a moment out of hesitation. G, J, L, U, and V. Well, U's going to be an obvious one. I wonder though. I do wonder though. No, don't do that because that's still 2. Yeah, that's the best I can do with that. And yeah, that takes care of J as well. Let's do the D then. Because I do my J's like this. Because of how I do my J. That leaves me then with L, U, so L, how many have I done? That's 13. G, L, and I've done 13. G, L, G, I, and L, G, L, and V. Well, V is going to be the same as that, U and J. If you're going to make it a 0 odd node pattern, that takes care of that. And now G, I don't think you can make a 0 out of either. Unless you do this. It's a good way to do it. all that, but then that looks more like I'm doing something with an S. I'll do that again. Not like that. You could do this up to thinking. Actually, it could be same could be argued with C as well. Because then with that, I'd sort of thought you could do the same as C. Because then with that, you've got that for C. And then you've got that for G. That now leaves me with L, and that leaves me with L. And I've got a good one for L. Yeah, that looks like a clock, but that's still 2 odd nodes. Now, if I do come up with something, if I do come up with a way of doing a zero odd node pattern out of I found it. There we go. So that's what I've done with all the 4 and 6 odd nodes. And that's what I've done with all the 2 odd nodes. Turn them all into 0. And now the ones that already are 0 odd nodes, that looks like what I did with the B. Right, let's try that again. The way to do a D, and then O, which is easy enough. I'll have to do that again. Again. What I want to do, there we go, O. Now, there are some letters you do need to be careful with because, and I'll show you those, there are some letters you need to be careful with. And those are those particular ones, because if you have a look, it's bad enough that most of these, all of the four plus odd node letters are here, because if you add stubs to them, points, like for example, if you then do something like, if you do something with A, yeah, it's fine that you do something like that, but then you've turned 4 odd nodes into 8s. Because if I shall take you back to the black pen, I shall show you exactly where they all are. And it's the same with D as well. So you can do this with D as well, but you've turned 0 into 4 if you do. And it's the same with something like H as well, because H is particularly bad. Because you've now turned 6 odd nodes into this. So you've got 12 there, and then your 3, and then you've got your 2 there as well. So you've turned 6 odd nodes of H into 14 if you do that. Even if you do something with any of the others, you've got to be careful of them. Like I. I'll show you what happens if you do I like that. You've tripled your odd nodes. And then if you do the same with J, you've turned 2 into 4. Like such. You're not going to complete them. So what I've got here, so for example, let's look at H. I've been jogged. Yeah, you can't really do much with those. And then with D, got that left over. And then for A, you got that. Also, I just had a thought. There's one place I forgot to put it. Extra dots, because you've not got 8 odd nodes in the A. If you do it like that, you've got 10. Yeah, so you haven't got 8 odd nodes if you do your A like that. You've got 10. And there's your best option on that. Well, J, you would then do it in the same way I normally would. But then you've got 1 over. And then I, because you've given yourself 6 odd nodes here, you've got that. And then with Z, on the other hand, you're thinking to yourself, but Darren, what are you meaning with Z? Because that's fine, you've still only got 2 odd nodes. But do that, however, and you turn that into 4. But then if you do this, you have a 0 odd node pattern for Z. But I've already done those. I'm now looking at advising you to be careful with these letters. And Y is the same as well. You got 4 there on its own. But then if you do these, you've turned, again, 4 odd nodes into 10. It's a rather interesting way of going about stuff, but look, if you look at Y, yeah, you've run into problems. So we'll move on to the next part, and that is, so we've been fixing letters for the past 40 odd minutes. Now we're going to try and break the numbers. So that's what I've got here. So I've got 0 odd nodes out of 8 and 0. But what I do want to look at with that is I want to see if I can match odd nodes to the numbers. So with that being said, let me do a 4. This is how I normally would write my numbers. And that's got 2 odd nodes. Not now, it doesn't. It's got 4. And then you see where it goes wrong if you do these. Now with 6 is an interesting one. I'm going to put something here. This is what I normally see on my Facebook feed. And then I put that across it as well. And that gives you 6 odd nodes. And then I'll do another thing that you might think's impossible with this. Nothing's impossible though when it comes to Darren's Corner. But I've now turned 0 odd nodes into 8. Now 0 and 2 are absolutely fine because obviously 0's got 0 odd nodes and 2's got 2 to begin with. But now what we're going to do is we're now going to attempt to do the patterns with the extra nodes. And then you find that you can't. Now I've turned 8 into a so tragic. because then you've got that, that, and that. And the number 8 has 8 odd nodes. It's an interesting way to do stuff like this. It's just incredible what you've got. It's incredible what you can do. Now, these are the numbers that you've got to be careful with when putting them into a pattern. And you see why? Because you can do so many things with a number. So let's start with 1, for example. That's now become 4 odd nodes if you put a stand on the bottom of it. Like that. And then for 4, you can actually make 4 even worse. So that's how I normally would write my 4. There's 2 odd nodes. That's what I did earlier. But you can also do that as well. And there are some fonts that do that as well. And that now gives you 6 odd nodes. So you've made it even worse for yourself. And you'll see why. And for 7, that's absolutely fine because it's still only 2 odd nodes. But then if you do something like that, and even that, and I don't think I've seen any fonts do that. That gives you 4 odd nodes. And doing this, takes you up to 8. Doing that takes you up to 8. Doing this as well, because there are some fonts that do their 7s like that. I've seen a few. Takes you up to 10. And then, of course, it can't be done. Now, a 9 is an interesting one because there are other ways you can deal with a 9. So if you do that, you're crossing over on yourself. And just keep on trying. Looks like a Q. And it's the same if you do the 9 this way as well. That looks like a G. There are some places in the world that do that. But that's only 2. Because then you can do this. And do your 9 that way. So I think then in that case I'll get rid of the 9. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.